Hi, Thomas. Thank you very much for your time and to be my third guest. We met on Twitter.
Yes, we did.
All the guests that I have. And today we will talk about your journey from, say, conventional IT service provider to one of the Shopify agencies that have a different approach to offering their services. So can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. I'll make it as short and concise as possible. So I started in, I've had my current business for over 20 years now, and I started like you mentioned as a classical IT service provider. I was working for banks and IT projects. I had some subcontractors working for me, freelancers. I never had any employees, never wanted any. And worked in Munich for a bank and staffed IT projects with freelancers, and that eventually got boring, and I kind of burned out and put the whole thing on autopilot. So I still had subcontractors going for me, working for me, and money coming in from that. But I dropped out of the active duty, so to speak, and went on what eventually became like a 7-year sabbatical / self-finding journey, whatever you want to call it. And during that time, about 2012, I came up with the idea for a physical product called the Groove Board, which was a lap desk for the iPad at the time that had just come out 2 years prior, I think. That led to opening a Shopify store at a time when Shopify was virtually unknown in Germany. There were probably a couple hundred stores at the time in Germany. And because I had to customize the store to make it work in Germany, to make it legally compliant and all those things, I got to know the platform. And because I'm a software developer by trade, I know my way around code. I figured, this might be a good way out of the old IT consulting business. And by chance, I got listed on back then, the Shopify experts directory was like the directory of service providers on the Shopify ecosystem. And I got listed on there as one of the first in Germany, and got my first jobs relatively quickly. And from there, developed over the years to, well, I'm still doing it today, but I'm doing it full time now since 2017. That's when I started doing it full time. It was a side gig, and then for a couple of years it got more and more, and I realized that I could take it full time, and I did that in 2017. And yeah, that's basically where I'm now. And right now I kind of I don't know if COVID was the reason for it, but I kind of got a bit lazy and burned out again. On the whole Shopify stuff and ecommerce stuff and doing client projects. And so I let the business languish a bit and got a bit lazy with things. And right now I'm in the process of giving my solo agency, as I like to call it, because it's not freelancing, it's not an agency, it's kind of thing in between. Trying to give it a second lease of life.
Okay, great. But let's circle back. Your agency is not like a regular agency. I found you, I think it was in the early 2016, something like that. I think it was like that. Mm-hmm. And I was working on a Shopify store, and I was working for freelancers to solve issues, so I don't have to read documentation because I'm lazy. And when I found your agency, you didn't have the conventional agency, we offer this service and that service. You were straightforward. If you want German compliance, for the invoices stuff, it costs I don't know, 100 euros. If you want the theme setup, it costs 2,000 euros, something like that. So you went from you didn't create a conventional agency with services and everybody is calling you and you say, yeah, the cost depends on I don't know what. You went with a productized service. can you explain why? Why did
Sure,
you go
sure.
this route?
I started out completely conventionally like everybody else because it was starting working as a Shopify freelancer or agency or service provider, let's call it that, was completely new to me. And the corporate IT consulting world is something completely different. And that's my background and software development from the technology point of view. But I had never run a business like this, never run an agency, never worked with small clients like that. Couple exceptions, but more or less I was kind of finding my way into it. And so I started out like everybody else. I charged hourly. That was how I got started. I got the first inquiries from leads. They asked me, well, I need this, that, and the other thing. And then, okay, I'll just try to estimate that as best as I can. And what can I charge hourly? Yeah, I think because I'm starting out, 60 euros sounds fair. And that's how I started out. And after like 1, 2, 3 dozen projects of varying sizes, patterns started emerging, things started repeating, and I figured, I'm doing this over and over again. I'm getting fairly routine at it. Why am I punishing myself by charging hourly when I'm getting faster at providing the service? The faster and the better I get, the less I earn. That doesn't make sense. And I think at the time I read a book by Jonathan Stark called Hourly Billing is Nuts. If you haven't read it, go read it. It's basically about value-based pricing. And that kind of planted the seed in my head of trying something different in terms of selling my services. I tried implementing value-based services. That didn't go very well. But I was still hooked on the idea of just charging a fixed price for a fixed outcome. And so I started out with taking those things that I did over and over again for clients that were more or less the same, and priced them based on what I would have charged if were charging hourly. So if a particular deliverable would take me like 2 hours, I would take an hourly rate of, at that time I'd upped it a bit to like 80 or 90. I don't know. I don't recall. And would charge like 150, 160, 180 euros for it and put a price tag on it, make a list of deliverables and say, this is what you get, this is what it costs. And that worked surprisingly well. And so I, over time, added more products to that. It became a real tangled mess. And because it's a living thing, and I started implementing processes for delivery and templatizing things, and all while still doing hourly on the side because the productized stuff wasn't covering it yet in terms of revenue. But over time, I basically didn't do hourly at all anymore. I was like in the core years where I really had not perfected, but where the system was kind of chugging along nicely. I wasn't doing hourly at all. I was just doing fixed price. And I had more or less everything templatized, standardized, and was whipping out stores and customizations one after the other. And it was going quite nicely.
I'm in a world that is like your old world, pretty conventional, and let's say old school.
You mean like the IT consulting world? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's based on like, just in comparison, we scope everything and then we say it takes like 500 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So because I personally didn't found any approach to explain clients, and I didn't read the books. So maybe that will help in the future. But it's always when I say, okay, we will develop a store for you. So it's a fixed outcome. Okay, we have a design. It's custom. It's based on their look and CI/CD. But it's always, how much time do you need? I'm like, no, the store costs, let's say, 50,000 euros. And the purchase department, the German purchase departments, they were like, yeah, but when we buy like 1,000 screws, we know what each screw costs. So they have the same approach to services and value that we provide as they have to like physical things. What's what's the best approach to convince somebody that value-based pricing is much better for them than or how do you get them away from the hourly pricing?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for corporate clients because back when I was still working for that type of large client with 5-figure and 6-figure budgets, those are completely different clients than I work with now. And back when I was still doing the IT consulting, it was typical that they had a project that had a budget, and then they staffed the project with freelancers, and it was all hourly billing, but you had you were hired for mostly full-time for 6 months, or maybe 50% for a whole year or whatever. But it was, at the core of it, it was hourly. It wasn't value-based at all. And that was what they were used to, and that's what they wanted. They actually did the sourcing. The procurement department also kind of tried to purchase freelancers and staffing projects like they were buying paper clips, but it didn't really work out that way. So that was essentially hourly billing. I don't know how to get people to agree to value-based pricing. I tried implementing the value-based pricing approach as Jonathan Stark teaches it. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with his approach, because it definitely works for him and it works for a lot of people. But for the people I work for now and my target market, I'm certainly providing and selling a value. I'm not selling them time. I mean, unless I actually am, because I do sometimes work on something like retainers. If I don't have a fixed price package that fits the bill. But it's certainly a value proposition in that I'm offering a fixed deliverable and something that is of use to them, but I'm not really pricing it based on that value because I don't know what that value is for them. It could be one. That's also something that I think, Jonathan, it's a while that I've read the book, but I think one thing that he mentions in the book, and it makes sense, is that value is very subjective. A value for a $1 billion company is of something of a logo, let's say, is a lot higher than of that same logo for a mid-level, like a 10 million a year business doing lawnmowers or whatever. I don't know. So value is very subjective, but I'm selling the same thing to different people at the same price. So it's a different approach. And I'm not pricing based on value because I simply don't know what that value is to the individual client or customer.
Yeah, get it. Yeah. Maybe let's say it's easier for you because you communicate all the, let's say, products that you offer, and the people know what they are getting. So
exactly.
Like implementation of Klaviyo, something blue, I don't know what, and it's easier for them than, let's say, for an agency when some client calls them and says, "How much time do you need to build an e-commerce?" Maybe that's the big difference. Yeah. The thing with the productized service, I see it. I work in a few agencies, and we do always the same things over and over again. But I have the feeling that digital agencies claim that they are innovative, but they struggle to templatize, as you said, services and just offer them in a fixed price. It's we always go back to the drawing board and try to figure out the scope, but the scope is always the same. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different, but it is the same at the core. What do you think, or what's your thought on that, why digital agencies didn't work in this way? Because everything is pretty predictable. You could build.
What do you mean exactly by digital agency? Give me an example.
Let's say like an e-commerce agency.
Okay, so basically a store like mine.
Yes, but with 50 people, and they are doing from edge to end.
I think I can only presume, obviously. I don't know what goes on in the heads of my fellow colleagues, how they offer their services. And I'm not the only one, by the way, doing productized services. At the time, I was probably the only one, and I'm probably still among the few that do it because, as you said, the vast majority don't do it. They have the typical agency page and they're selling just a bag of services, but there's no prices there. You have to inquire for a price, and every price is negotiated per project, and it's a new project every time. I think you have to decide what you want to be to whom. You can't be everything to everybody, because the typical approach to freelancing that I've experienced and that I started out with is basically if you're not reaching out, leads are coming in, you're doing inbound marketing, like content marketing, whatever. Somebody comes to you and says, I need this and that and the other thing. And then you try to figure out how to render that service and figure out a price that makes sense for both parties. If you have this approach, productization is not going to work because each lead is going to be different, or at least they're going to sound different enough that you don't see the similarities between them that you could tie together into a product and offer that. So I think you have to go to the drawing board and figure out what part of the work you're doing is the same or similar enough from project to project, from client to client, that you can standardize it enough. You can't, I mean, some things, ideally, if you offer a downloadable product and instructions for installing that product, it can be completely hands-off, and that's actually something that I'm working on right now. Because my ideal scenario is I want to have a quote unquote agency where I can basically I wake up in the morning and have like 3 sales in my inbox from last night or whatever. I mean, who doesn't dream of that, right? And at that point, it's not going to be really an agency anymore. It's just going to be a digital products company or whatever you want to call it. But it will provide services that would otherwise be rendered by someone sitting at a computer and actually doing it manually. So I think what keeps people from productizing their services is trying to be too many things to too many people, not willing to say no, because if something doesn't fit your portfolio, you can that's also what I did. If I get inquiries for things that don't fit my current portfolio, I say no. But if I get 5 inquiries for the same thing, I figure, maybe I should add that to my portfolio. And so then I take on maybe that client, that the 5th client, that I cave and I take on the project, charge whatever for it. And it doesn't really matter at that point because I'm just trying to create a new product for my portfolio and using this client project to create it and get paid for it at the same time. And so I create this new product because I know there's obviously demand there. And when that project is finished, I have a new product from my portfolio, and the next person who comes and inquires about that same or very similar thing, I have something to offer them. And maybe they even find me through that new thing because they search for the search term, whatever it is, and found exactly my new productized service. And maybe I have to adjust it for the next couple of clients because it isn't really, it's not shoed in yet. It's still a little bit wobbly on its feet, but over time, over a couple of projects, it'll become something that I can basically use over and over again with very little changes from project to project. But you have to be willing to say no to stuff that doesn't fit what you're offering.
Yeah. This is not going to happen in agencies because agencies,
they need money. They need to make payroll. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the one thing. And most agencies have the mindset that we can do everything. So
yes,
if somebody comes and says, "I need a Shopify store," they're like,
"Sure,
hell yeah, we did like none, but hey,
yeah,
we will build it for you." And you have more the approach, okay, focus on one thing and ignore everything else.
Yep.
And then you can see, okay, if the 5th inquiry is like, there is something to it, let's try it and get paid for it and optimize it, iterate on other clients. Then you can basically scale, even if you're one person.
Right.
I see it with, what's his name? He's running Design Joy.
Yeah, I know him.
Brett? Brett?
Brett something or other. Yeah, it's Brett from Design Joy. His last name is escaping me, but I think we know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all. We are in the same fit. So.
Yeah.
So, in terms of why did you focus just on Shopify? I know you started your you wanted to sell a product, and then you worked on Shopify, and then that's great. Why didn't you move to different systems? Like in this time, like 2012, 13, we did just Magento stores and Oxid and PrestaShop. Shopify was like, the legal issues, it's in German. So the legal issues and payments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Why did you double down on Shopify?
That was actually, I saw it as an advantage because I was not the first, but one of the first movers in that market, in the German language market. And I was listed in that experts directory, and that's how I got my first jobs. But I hate being dependent on something like that, a platform that I don't control. So I want my business to come through my own website, which is why I never did any work through Upwork or Fiverr or whatever. At the time, there was basically no German language content related to Shopify at all. And I decided, I think it was in 2014, must have been, I started blogging about Shopify, and I thought, I'll just try this out. I read a bit about content marketing and how to use that to attract leads to your business. And that actually worked very well and very quickly, because it was like pouring water into giving water to a thirsty man in the desert, right? Because there was nothing there. There was like one blog article that was severely outdated with information about Shopify that was long since incorrect. And that was it. And I started blogging about stuff, didn't even really do any SEO research or anything. I just figured, what are people going to be searching for? And like the basics and some more specific stuff. And it worked very well. And of course, the question presented itself, do I branch out to different systems? Like WooCommerce was up and coming at the time. Never really considered things like Magento, because e-commerce systems are so complex now. They were complex enough back then, but now even more so. And I think, especially as a solopreneur, you can't really do more than one. And even if you see people who just build normal websites without e-commerce functionality, which is a lot less complex, because e-commerce is the website stuff plus all the other stuff with payments and checkout and cart and all those things. A lot of them also specialized. There are people who just do Webflow. There are people who just do WordPress, and especially if they're solo. As an agency, obviously, you can have 5 people doing WordPress, 3 people doing Shopware, whatever. But for me, it never really occurred. I asked myself the question, but I actually made a bet on Shopify, because I figured the way they're growing and the way they're marketing themselves, and they're really fresh wind in an area where that had grown pretty stale. I mean, Magento is still around today, obviously, but they were really up and coming at the time. And I kind of saw that potential. I like to believe I saw that potential, and I kind of made a bet on it and said, I'm going to go all in on Shopify. And it was low risk for me because it was a side gig at the time. I still had income from the IT consulting. But it grew from there, and I had never had a reason to branch out, because I'd rather be like a medium-sized fish in a small pond than a big fish in a huge ocean where you're just one of the other big fish, which I never wanted to be or could be as a solopreneur. And so it never really presented itself.
Yeah. And why didn't you choose to extend or scale beyond yourself? Like to build an actual agency, like with a bunch of people and HR and stuff like that?
Well, first of all, I'm kind of terrified of the idea of managing people, and I don't want to manage people. It's something that I decided a long time ago that I don't want to have employees. I've managed freelancers. I have no problem with managing freelancers. I had up to a dozen subcontractors at a time during my IT consulting days, and I've worked with freelancers various countries on various projects for software development, design, video production, all those things. So the deal with freelancers is that there's no responsibility beyond they deliver the work, they get paid, and that's it. It's a very simple relationship. With employees, especially with a market like and the legalities of it in Germany, there's just so much tied to it. And the thought of having to make thousands of euros of payroll every month, and that's what leads to, I mean, sure, you can grow your agency and you can make millions if you do it right. But I don't know, I think I sleep better without that much overhead and having to meet a certain quota every month to make payroll. That's just, and again, I don't enjoy managing people. So the first person I would probably have to have as an employee is someone who manages my people. And I don't know if that really works, because I think the first people you have to put on your staff are people who make money, and that's not someone who manages the people. So, no.
Yeah. So the whole Shopify community is pretty active. It's one of the systems that are that have a good documentation where you can find things, because they have a huge development team. And with all the developments, they are tapping into waters that are not, let's say, familiar to regular Shopify developers. We talked in the beginning, they are moving with the investment in Sanity, the CMS, and the development of Hydrogen, front-end framework, and the purchase of Remix Run, which is like a progressive front-end framework based on React. They are moving away from this monolithic structure to a more headless, composable approach. And I don't know if you worked already with this, because it's still edgy. It's not, there are a lot of issues that you have to rebuild everything from beginning. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. Even the whole card, the products and everything. But where do you see, from your point of view, the development of Shopify and the community and the App Store? Because there are a lot of people dependent not only on the architecture of Shopify, how it is now, they depend also on the apps they are providing, which in some instances will not be able to function in like the headless world, in the new world. Mm-hmm. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm vaguely aware, let's call it that, vaguely aware of all those developments. I haven't worked with any of them. I know the terms. I don't really know what they mean. From what I've learned so far, I think all these things, as they are now, are more targeted towards larger enterprise merchants. They're not going to be viable for like merchants doing less than $1 million or even $2 million a year in revenue. So I think this is an enterprise play at least at this point, because the cost of those projects is probably going to be like 5 to 10x of a regular. This is basically, I think, Magento territory, where you pay like 25 to 50K for a completely custom store. And there are businesses that need that, but those businesses are not my customers. I've worked with some bigger companies, like I've worked with Jockey and with Heineken, and even they just work with a regular Shopify platform and a template from the theme store, and that works for them. And so I still think that market, I mean, I don't know how much these new technologies make up in terms of GMV or market share, whatever you want to call it, for Shopify. I think it's definitely something they want to invest in, or they are investing in it. But I think the traditional classic Shopify, where you have this monolithic cloud service that does the whole e-commerce thing from A to Z, and not just provides a technology platform to plug a cart and a checkout into any other platform, which is what all those other headless things are. I think they're going to be two separate things that are going to coexist I think for me, at least for the foreseeable future, was for me, my horizon right now is like 10 years. And I think even 10 years from now, the core Shopify system is still going to be there unless they want to abandon like 70% of their merchant base, because I think that's probably even a low estimate. I think the vast majority of their merchants are still on the quote unquote old monolithic full service cloud service, and I think that most of them will remain there.
Yeah, that's something what I heard from a different Shopify agency, and they said the same. It's the ease of use. People want to avoid all the things like DevOps, which you need.
Yep.
You have like extensive QA because you have a lot of API connections if you're using like middlewares and stuff like that, and you have to rebuild everything. So if you need like a real custom, let's say custom experience, which is like totally tailored to your brand and your features, and you want to plug in like different layers or personalization layers, then it makes sense. Otherwise, I guess 99% of all Shopify agencies or freelancers will stick to the basic system, which is,
and merchants
totally
will
fine.
too. Merchants will too. Yeah.
Yeah, it will be. Merchants will only switch to like the headless system if the agency, I would say, nudges them. Like, hey, it's cool. So we can build the front end, and if you decide, we don't need any, or we want to move away from Shopify to, I don't know, Salesforce, then we have already the whole front end components, and we can just plug it in a different system.
Yeah.
Easily. So it will take a little bit, I guess, around 100K to move like to a different system, but that's okay. But yeah, they will definitely stay there. So where do you see the future of Shopify? They tried last year, or they implemented, I guess, the NFT thing. They're like moving in different parts and in different directions. And what I see, they are like implementing features from applications that are available on the App Store that are good, make money, and they're trying to implement all the features like the newsletter, I don't know, translation, all the things. What's your take on that? Will it make the platform more brittle? Because now we have like a solid foundation, and we have all the apps that are working independently. And if they're pushing more and more into the core, will it change everything? Or what's your take on the future of Shopify?
Well, just from a technology standpoint, I think it won't really change that much for the platform, because they're implementing all those things. What Apple users know as Sherlocking. When you develop something for a platform, like from the perspective of an app, Shopify app developer, you develop an app, put it on the App Store, which is the only way to sell apps to Shopify merchants, and then you become really successful, and then Shopify creates their own version of that app. Amazon has been known to do that too, and it's called Sherlocking because Sherlock was an old tool on the Mac platform, and I don't recall the specifics, but it's Googleable. So that's what Shopify has actually been doing for a while now. But in terms of technology, it doesn't change much about the platform, because I think all of the things they're doing, they're not bloating their monolith, because they're implementing all these things as apps themselves. Even now, if you look into the Shopify admin and you look at each view that's rendered there, if it's editing a product description, or if it's managing customers or whatever, all those things are apps now. that are loaded in an iframe. So I think they're kind of tearing apart the monolith to make it a little more agile. Probably the wrong term, but to make it less of a monolith. And so I think they're not really adding a lot of stuff on there to bloat the core system. They're just adding stuff where it's needed and offering their own takes on things that frankly were always blind spots in the ecosystem, like that they would eventually offer their own translation app. I think it was inevitable. It just took very long, but some things at Shopify take incredibly long to manifest themselves. But it's kind of ridiculous that they offered a translation platform on the back end, but no way for a merchant to use a first-party tool to actually create the translations. You had to use something like Langify or Weglot or whatever, which is kind of ridiculous. And so that was the writing for that, I think, was on the wall, and a lot of other things along those lines are happening too. They're just kind of clawing back some ground that they lost. Because they don't want to answer these uncomfortable questions anymore. Why doesn't Shopify have that?
Yeah, got it. From your point of view, what are the, let's say, 5 misconceptions about Shopify, especially in Germany? Because it's, I think this year somebody told me there is an issue with the CDN that is not GDPR compliant. And everybody is like panicking in German manner. So it's move away from Shopify, move to something different over the weekend. And then it was like a different, let's say, marketing automation provider. Oh, it's not GDPR compliant again in Europe somewhere.
Yeah.
What are the misconceptions about Shopify from you?
Well, that whole kerfuffle that happened a couple of months ago was this was, I think, Happy Coffee was the store. They came from WooCommerce and then they moved to Shopify. And the guy, I think he's also solo. Maybe he has some VAs working for him, but he's also one guy selling coffee, and he's doing a very good job of it. I think he makes like 1.2 million a year. In revenue, something like that. And so apparently somebody reported him to some data protection authority, whatever, that he was using Google fonts. Oh, the horror, Google fonts. And he wasn't using them locally. They probably was an app that was doing it, because the standard fonts in Shopify are not coming from Google service. They're coming from Shopify CDN. And Shopify didn't budge on the whole topic, and the CDN also played a role that CDNs, not just Shopify's, all CDNs like Cloudflare, whatever, they're apparently also problematic from the point of view of some data protection authorities in Germany. But I think they're going overboard with that, because I mean, the IP address is being transmitted. Yeah, big deal. I mean, it's a dynamic IP address that nobody can do anything with. But let's not even get into that discussion too deeply. I think, well, I don't think, I know that you can definitely operate a Shopify store in Germany, which is perfectly legally compliant with the GDPR. I don't have any doubts about that. There were some minor niggles from Shopify's side too, how they processed cookies, how they stored cookies without consent, but they fixed that. So if you set up a Shopify store right now with the bare minimum of data collection, it's perfectly legally compliant with everything, CDN aside. But I don't see that as an actual real issue. I think that was a little panic reaction on the side of Happy Coffee at the time, because he was facing like a fine of potentially 60,000 euros, and so he moved platforms. Other misconceptions of Shopify. Well, I think there are a lot of misconceptions about Shopify come from the fact that it's a cloud platform. And my clients always ask me what happens when, especially the clients that come from other platforms like WooCommerce or Shopware or whatever, what happens when the platform gets an update? Because they're used to having an agency send them a bill for like 5,000 euros when there's a platform update. And then I tell them it doesn't happen. It's completely transparent. And my own store is using a template from like 5 years ago, and it still works. So you don't even have to update your template. Because Shopify, one of the things they do really well is maintain backwards compatibility of the platform. So that's a misconception that people think that Shopify, there are updates like with other systems, and that's not the case. So it's a cloud service, completely transparent. You get new features when they're rolled out, and that's it. Well, that it's not legally compliant, obviously, is a misconception, but I don't really think that was one blog post that blew up for like a week, and then, the next thing came running through, and that was quickly forgotten. So I don't think there's a widespread misconception about Shopify being not legally compliant in Germany. I mean, there are people who always like to panic about these things, and I think sometimes in Europe or in Germany we take like the whole privacy thing a little bit too far. Yeah,
like the potential ban of ChatGPT.
Yeah, I don't even think that potential ban was in the books, but yeah, discussions like that, sure. Yeah. I mean, Italy banned it for reasons that didn't have anything to do with the fact that it's generative AI. They banned it because they were kind of, their privacy policy was a little bit wobbly, and they were processing data without consent, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I told my wife today that they will, or I saw a post, I don't know where I saw it, I guess on Twitter, where somebody posted, like Germany will be the next in line banning ChatGPT and join like Italy, Russia, South Korea, and And I had told her that, and she's using it more than I do, and she was shocked. I was like, why? Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
What's the deal? And I was like, yeah, it's for like privacy concern. What privacy? But it's, I guess at the end it was just like the privacy policy that, as you said, was not
something like that. Yeah.
But when I think back last year when we had like the hype of NFTs and Web3, and I looked at all the projects that are available on, there was like a website, none of them, not the cookie consent, not the privacy policy,
of course not,
phone number, nothing.
Of course
like
not.
the domain was blocked. You didn't know who was behind it. And they were like big projects, or big rug pulls, let's say.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the point of AI and ChatGPT. Where do you see it in e-commerce? We had like, as I said, last year, everything was like metaverse, and e-commerce will be like, you will buy sneakers with your VR goggles, and then you will get like an NFT for your sneakers. And
yeah, how's that doing? That went well.
Yeah. But now with AI, where do you see the role of AI in e-commerce besides like generating content?
Well, generating content is the obvious one, obviously. I think I'm not recalling his real name. He goes by Blanklob on Twitter. I think he's a French guy. He also develops stuff for Shopify. So that's Blank LOB. Look him up. He's pretty interesting if you're into Shopify stuff. And I think he just today or yesterday announced an app for Shopify where he's doing like a chatbot thing for the merchants, and not for the merchants, for the customers of the store. So, which in itself isn't very new. Chatbots have been around for I don't know how long, and they all more or less sucked. So it'll be interesting to see if if they get better now, because these large language models, you can train them on your own content, on your own way of speaking to customers. And that's what's a lot different than the old models. And it remains to be seen how useful they actually are. I don't really have a prediction on that. But I think in the end, these AIs, as we know them now, they're probably going to be everywhere within like 2 years. There's not going to be anything where they can be used where they're not going to be present in some way, shape, or form. I haven't really put too much thought into it. I've used ChatGPT and actually paid $20 a month for ChatGPT Pro just because it's so much fun playing around with it. And I hate it when it takes so long for the output. And so for the $20 a month, you get higher priority, and that works well. And I've actually used it to migrate a little Python utility that I wrote myself to a new GUI library, like to PyQt. And I could have done it manually, but I would have had to look at documentation and debug the whole thing. It would have probably taken me better part of a weekend. And with ChatGPT, I just wrote a prompt, which was quite challenging to really nail what you want the thing to do. But in the first run, it created exactly what I wanted, even named it correctly. It named it based on the concept that what the app was, which was basically a Python script runner. And I just copy pasted it into a little Py file and ran it, and it ran on first try. That was kind of fascinating. And I really, really wonder where this is going to be in even 5 years from now. I can't imagine where it's going to be 10 years from now. It's overhyped right now, but I think it's not going to be like some people say, yeah, this is the new Web3 NFT crypto. I do not think that at all, because it has actual value. NFTs never had value. So there's that.
There is the meme, like the freeway with like 50 lanes.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're all making a U-turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Web3 experts going to AI.
Right.
Becoming,
and there is some of that. There are people selling get rich quick themes, like 99% of people are using ChatGPT wrong. Here's what blah, blah, blah. And then they sell you their $297 course and all that. They're everywhere. Obviously they're on every hype. But just because they're there doesn't mean that there's no substance there. I think there's a lot of substance there because I've used it for something and it worked just for a very small thing. And so I think it's here to stay.
Yeah. I think the big difference between like the NFTs last year and AI this year is the utility.
Exactly.
You have something, the ease of use.
That's something that.
Yeah, go on, sir.
Sorry, when you mentioned utility, because that was something that was always mentioned alongside NFTs, that there were NFTs that had actual utility, like you could, participate in some stupid conference or something, or get a badge, or like the definition of utility of NFTs was completely ridiculous. And AI, the current iteration of it, which definitely has its limits, which we'll probably see fairly soon, but it definitely has utility. Already it has utility. You can use it in your daily work, not for everything, and you shouldn't always fact check, obviously, but it has actual utility, and you can use it to save time, which is the most precious resource we have. And I'm not sure how I'm going to use it in my job. I only know that I will. That much is sure.
Yeah, I think the whole dev community will just benefit from it. I don't think you can replace, or you shouldn't replace people with AI. But you should, let's say, give them superpowers. Like,
right.
If you have like a co-pilot and you work on something, and it fixes things along the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I tested it myself with like Shopify. Like, I need to display this and that. What's the way? Mm-hmm. And with ChatGPT 4. It gave me like a comprehensive description of what was I doing or what should I do and where should I put the code.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. The same, I did the same for Laravel. I don't have a lot of PHP experience, and I had to change like the payment system from a user to a team.
Mm-hmm.
But the team has multiple users, and it also gave me like the correct thing back. And and at the end, please migrate your database and stuff like that. So I think if you're a developer and you use it correctly, you can be much faster and the code will be much cleaner.
Yeah.
There are also privacy concerns on which things it's training. I don't know, but for developers, I think it's a blessing.
It definitely can be, yes.
For copywriters, I think it will be a little bit hell.
Well, I don't know that business enough to really see if it's a net benefit to them or if it's actual threat to them. I think it's definitely a threat to bad copywriters because ChatGPT can probably create crappy content like nobody's business, so they're out of a job. But nobody really has. We as developers, we don't have the right to keep our jobs forever. We have to keep changing all the time. But it's definitely going to affect some areas more than others. And I just tweeted this the other day, and the tweet actually went fairly well, where I said that, the clients we get as web developers, they're barely able to tell us what they want, and most of the time they don't really know what they need. And so there's absolutely no scenario I can see right now where a potential client of us would go to ChatGPT and instead of hiring us to create an online store or develop a software, because they simply could not create prompts that would result in anything usable. And I don't see that changing within the next 5 to 10 years. They're still going to have to rely on, we as professionals, our work is going to fundamentally change, and mostly for the better, I think, but we're just going to have to rethink a lot of things. I don't think we'll all become like prompt engineers, but it's going to become a big part of going forward.
Yeah, I saw that tweet, and I think I saw something similar or along those lines a few years back. And I think it was when Copilot launched,
mm-hmm.
and or some other AI development tool. I don't know what it was. And somebody also wrote people, we are safe. Clients can't brief correctly what they want, so
yeah,
we are totally safe. And I have to be honest. In 2 decades of working in the industry, I never had a briefing where I was like, this is awesome. I know what I have to do.
No.
I will do it.
Me
it's
neither. No.
Okay, it looks good, but I have 5 sheets of questions. Can you please get back to me? So I think, we will be safe for a time.
Yeah, I think so too.
Great. Yeah, we have close to 1 hour. I think that's a wrap for the first session. I think we have to do another one in a year and then see if AI has the same future as NFTs or will suffer the same thing that NFTs had. And
you know where my money is.
NFTs. I got it.
Absolutely. I think they're going to make a big comeback.
Did you, just off topic, did you buy any NFTs?
NFTs, no. I have a very small amount of mixed crypto. I had a phase of maybe 2 to 3 weeks where I was going down the rabbit hole, as it were. And I still think crypto has its applications, and I don't think crypto in itself is completely ridiculous. Nobody needs that many cryptocurrencies, but the whole topic in itself, I think, still has merit, and we'll see where that goes. I don't know where it's going, but I think there's still useful applications for the technology. It's just not NFTs, because NFTs were, people talked about rug pulls. NFTs were a rug pull from A to Z. That's all they were. And I think it was basically people who got rich with crypto trying to scam other people who got rich from crypto out of their money. That was, so no harm done, maybe. I don't know. But I'm glad it's, I don't know if it's over. It seems kind of over with NFTs. And I was kind of not really shocked to see Shopify get into the NFT thing last year, but I think they're not really going to pursue that any further at this point. They like to hop on trends, but I don't think they're going to take that any much further. I certainly don't hope so.
Yeah. For me, I think it was, I tried to purchase, first of all, it took me like 2 days to figure out how to transfer money.
Oh yeah.
That was like, how? Why?
I felt so stupid doing it. Like it was like I was trying to read a documentation for a lawnmower in Greek or something. All the concepts, nothing made sense. It was like a completely different language, and I think that was on purpose.
Yeah, it made it the entry, like the Germans like to say the Hürde.
Yeah, the barrier to entry. Yeah.
Yeah, the barrier to entry.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Was so high that you had to be like in this community and you have to breathe the same air as the others to participate in it, because it was like, yeah, you need like MetaMask, and then you need like a hash. I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Somewhere. And then I went to OpenSea to purchase something, and it was like, I don't know, 50 euros or, I don't know, a fart in a jar or something like that. And I think I have that. And there was like gas fees, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
What okay?
Yeah.
For what? And it was like, the purchase was like 50 euros and 115 euros gas fees. So it doesn't make sense. It's like when I send somebody money to, I don't know, Argentina, and it costs like €1, and people are complaining about that. And now we are paying 10 times for like fees.
Yeah, the fees were often on some transactions. The fees were higher than the actual money being transferred. Yeah. Ridiculous, like 10x.
Yeah, and I was like, oh no, it's nothing for me.
No,
I'm too old for that.
I just put a little bit of money into it, just as a just like put everything on red at the casino. That was basically the play. I didn't believe in it. I just think, if it works, why not? You'll be sorry you didn't do it. And if I lose the money, then it'll hurt a little bit, but it's not going to kill me.
Yeah, I think we all had a little bit of FOMO.
Yeah, that's the FOMO was big.
Yeah. But at the end, it was like.
Interestingly enough, with the, I think you have, or maybe it's just me, but I tend to have FOMO with stuff I think is only going to work for a short time. It's going to be away fairly soon, which turned out to be true with NFTs and crypto in general. But with AI, I don't have the FOMO because, I'm going to just let this see how it plays out. We're having like 100 new AI tools launching every day, and 90% of them are not going to be here in 3 years. So let's see how this plays out. But I'm sure it's still going to be, something's going to be there in 3 years, and I'm going to keep up to date and use it as best I can. But I don't have any FOMO because it's not going away.
Yeah, I think me neither. But I think it's tied to the barrier of entry. It's easy to use for everybody. Everybody can use AI
to an extent. Sure. I mean, you have to get good results. You do have to figure out. I mean, prompting is not an easy science at this point.
Somebody said, smarter than me, said, shit in, shit out. Same as the briefing.
Exactly.
If you type in stupid things, you will get stupid things.
Yep.
And there is no, there is money making. There is a gold rush. but it's on the developer side,
Yeah.
the company side. So it's not everybody is trying to make money from AI. Like, I don't know, my mother, let's say, yeah. But like with NFTs, we're like, do you have like a monkey? No, I don't have a monkey. But it was like, everybody knew about it. You could make money with like pictures, and I guess this is when the whole FOMO started. But now it's like only developers are trying to build new things on top of the existing ones, and there is no gold rush in the, let's say, with normal people.
No, the end user, there's no gold rush there because it doesn't have direct monetary value. Because right now the applications for end user are very limited because the methods of input are still so limited. The first things like AutoGPT came up over the last couple of days, where somebody hooked together a couple of systems, and then they had basically ChatGPT, but it was voice controlled, and it could actually do things like order pizza, and so not just produce text, but it was being used to actually do things, and that's definitely gonna happen. So I think, like, the quote unquote intelligence that a system like GPT has right now in a system like Alexa, like in an Amazon Echo, or those AIs now, they're kind of like they seem even stupider now than they seemed before, because they're next to useless. They're like a jukebox that you can control with your voice, or you can do a Google search with your voice, which is not really that impressive. But hook those things up with the new generation, with this current version of AI, and I think we start getting places that become very interesting for normal people. And I'm just thinking about how I can use it to save time, to automate things in my business, and not to make money, but to make the same money and work less. Because that's really all I'm interested in. More money is always good, but I'd rather have more time.
Well said. Well said. Thomas, thank you very much for your time and the insights and the quick
Thank you too.
We had. And we will see each other on Twitter.
We will.
Bye.
Bye.